back in the studio with Jonathan Decamps, award-winning photojournalist. He's about to educate me on the year 2020 in photographs. Very excited to take you guys through this. Thank you so much to Miami Community News for sponsoring this program. It's really been quite a highlight for me of my pandemic life and just this year in general. So shout out to them. But we only have 30 minutes really to get through some of these photos. Jonathan, tell us what we're about to go through. Introduce yourself if you like to the people. I mean, it's your second time on the show. I feel like everyone knows you.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a great year. Well, depending how you look at it, but it's been a great year for social movements. A lot has happened, starting with the pandemic, and then with these uprisings to end racism and other movements detailing that parted from mattering on social movement and changes, demanding changes in politics. And we started. It started around in May with the death of George Floyd and the outrage. Also, I think that the pandemic it was a time that everybody was in lockdown or with a lot of restrictions. So it was fertile soil for these movements and these demands to social policies to happen. And like in the pictures, some of the pictures that I have, they started in Fort Lauderdale. Also, they were here in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and we'll see some pictures of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
With the Get Off Our Necks March, which it was commemorating the anniversary of the march, the Million Man March, headed by Martin Luther King.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to come down and show them. I'm excited to take a look. I do think that because of the time that people had kind of on their hands, anytime you are able to just have a little bit of free time, things that are more important come to light. You're able to really focus in on other passions that you might have, things that are important to you, things you find affecting your lives. And, we can go on to a whole theory, but let's take a look at some of these photographs because they're very powerful images. And Tommy's going to help us out. This is an excellent photograph because she is somewhat famous in Miami, right?
She's an activist. Her name is Jasmine Rogers. She's a known activist in the community.
She's right down the street from my home in Liberty City. I think she runs a community center there. Very powerful.
She used to, she has worked with different organizations like Miami Worker Center, New Florida Majority, and so on. And here there was, they were leading, this was the biggest march, probably the biggest protest in South Florida.
I know quite a few of you guys got pepper sprayed during this time. I know.
Yeah, it ended up with a situation once the a police officer shoved off a lady who was on the floor at the end of the march, which sparked an outrage, a little something in that on that day. But with the other pictures,
yeah, we can scroll through these. So we've got Can't Breathe on the masks, and people are out here being safe. If you think protesting is bad, wait till I tell you about murder.
This was outside the prison in Fort Lauderdale, and the prison in downtown Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
There was a big gathering of the protesters when they were marching, and this was one of the spots where they stopped.
Oh, rest in peace. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's a beautiful.
So
sign,
a lot of the protesters with their signs, a lot of times they this is something that I see a lot. It's like, how many names, how many more were not filmed, and how many more is I'm tired of choosing names, and so, or having to write more names and so on. And this is part of the reflection.
It's really quite damaging to the mental health of people, these deaths and murders and killings in exponential ways. We had a guest on the show a few weeks ago where she talked about how people of color, women in particular, their levels of stress are higher, and the chemicals that get released in their bodies, they go up after a killing, and then over time it compounds in your body, and which leads to deaths during childbirth, and also the infant, the baby, also dying. So we think, oh, whatever, it's a murder on the street, just one person. No, it affects these communities at large, at whole, for generations. It goes through.
And that's a lot of the conversation that it's been looked for. It's like, how can we invest in these communities? How can we invest in these communities in order to avoid these situations? Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it can be as simple as having a family member who has a mental issue. Sometimes not even in Jacksonville. A couple of weeks ago, a filmmaker in Jacksonville asked a police officer who was in her driveway if they're not looking for no one to move along, and the police officers responded by getting onto her, knocking her in her door, in her room, in her house, knocking her to the floor, to the ground, breaking two of her teeth. Yep. And she's a filmmaker who has been doing a lot of this stuff. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, the PTSD, it can be big. And then, these are the conversations that have been coming in prominence, and we are in the middle of this debate: is how can we get funds, or how can we redistribute funds to other options of policing and having to deal with non-violent situation and non-violent cases.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the ones in,
okay,
well, yeah, there's.
So we're still here in Fort Lauderdale here with this,
and then we go to Miami.
Wow.
This was during the campaign, though. This party was during the campaign, the Trump unity wall. This was closer to
that? That's like a float, kind of.
It's trailer with this the bridge, and there's a person who comes out singing whatever there is a campaign. There was a campaign situation, activity or event. They will come and singing YMCA and other stuff. It's a way to. It was called the Trump Unity Bridge. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then these ones were the first day in Miami after the outrage of George Floyd, and when protesters took I-95 in front of the Miami Police Department.
I mean, this is a very powerful photo here, and I mean, luckily, I guess in some ways, the Miami Police Department hasn't really made the nationwide news lately, in the past year. But that's not to say that there aren't numerous.
Well, there is a situation that due to all these protests, the governor of the state of Florida has issued a variety of laws. Has proposed a variety of laws that would be targeted to protesters, right. either with congregating, either with manifesting. Will also have will make it viable for people who wants to run. If they want to run over with their cars to protesters, they can legally do it. So these are laws that are gonna be coming to Congress, to the state Congress next year. So yeah, a lot has been. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things that are going against constitutional rights right now.
Yeah,
You
I
can
do
go
remember
to.
hearing about
These
that.
are people going on the
I-95.
on I-95. Everybody had to stop, and this was in downtown.
Mm-hmm. I do feel for everyone who goes out during these times of these protests. It's frightening. It's overwhelming. It's scary. I mean, the passion, the anger, the police there. It's scary for everybody. I mean, you're very brave you're in the middle of it. I can't imagine. Like I've, done it in college, but I guess I'm just a little frightened these days. That's a very powerful shot. Silence is violence and racism. How many people would you say came out for these types of?
This first day, it's been the biggest day that I saw in Miami. Probably the biggest protest I ever seen since in Miami since Donald Trump won in 2016. I'll say they probably were over the thousands. I would say probably 4 or 5 thousand people came out that day, give or take.
How does it feel to be out there?
It feels, contrary to what you say, that it's scary. It's not really scary at all, because you feel that everybody out there is outraged just as you are for being out there and raising your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about a supportive situation. It's also, I think, that it's part of the mourning and healing. Like, communities need to do this in order for them to voice out their outrage.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, this can translate in situations that more people don't like, which is riot or civil unrest. So at least with protests, you can find a way, an outlet to heal what the community, the pain that community has gone through.
And for the most part, these protests are permitted or no?
Permitted? What do you mean by that?
Do you have to have a permit? No. So a difference between a protest and like a parade, for example, is one is a permit and one is not.
I think that you are right about that. One is a permit, one is not. Well, you have to consider, when you do a protest, it's out of an expression.
And it's our right as citizens of the United States of America to be able to protest and gather
according to the Constitution. Not me. According to the Constitution, you are supposed to be able to do that. It's the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech and assembly.
Freedom of speech and assembly.
So, I mean, part of it says freedom of speech and assembly, and it's part of what you can do in this country. And a lot of things, a lot of big changes happen in this society, because this is a new country compared to most of the countries in the world. This is probably the newest one, or one of the newest ones. So every time something like that has happened here, every time there is a need for a big change in our politics, it has been due to big, massive social movement that consists in protests. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. The United States, the way that we named this country, it's not the way that other countries have named themselves. So when people ask you, like, oh, where are you from? You don't say you don't say, oh, I'm United Statian, like, oh, I'm Polish, or, I'm British or something, because people say I'm American, but actually that's incorrect, because, I mean, you are American, but American doesn't mean you're from the United States.
Well, it's just like saying I'm European and not saying which part or which country in Europe.
Yes.
So you belong to a union, a European Union, you can say European, and you belong to a region, a part of a continent. but then you have to say, oh, I'm Spanish or French or
Right.
German.
But people in Canada don't say they're American, and people in Mexico don't say they're American, but they are, because they don't say
They
because
are.
it's associated
They
with the
are. They
United
are.
States.
They are actually, yes. They are
Right.
actually, Mexicans and Canadians are actually North Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then you have Central America and then South America. Central America and the Caribbean, which we say that here in Miami we are the the most advanced city in the Caribbean, right? We do claim that we belong to the Caribbean. And then not legally or officially, but popular, right? And then you have South America. So that's the thing, you know. A lot of times you say, "Oh, I'm from United States." Oh, what part? And then you say the state because it's a union.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Do we have?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, this
Jonathan.
was in Wynwood. This was when this
Oh,
huge march.
how do you get a shot like that? Look at that.
Yeah.
Make
this was because subsequently protests kept happening for months in Miami and in other big cities around the world. They just didn't stop until later on in the year.
You have photos from lots of different cities. The darkest places in hell are the ones reserved for those who remain neutral in times of mad crisis. Whew, jeez. Well, that is aggressive. I can't breathe. R.I.P. George Floyd. I don't know why, but I always want to read the signs. That's like the first thing that my eye goes to.
It is the purpose, because you not necessarily with the pictures, unless there is like in this one that there's an expression and you can tell what's going on. A lot of these other protests where you don't have a certain expression or you cannot see an expression, the signs is what will communicate, and it's the message that will communicate this for years. So we're gonna look back and look at this 30 years in the future, and then we're gonna see what was the problem, what was the issue, what were the people's minds thinking. A lot of times when you go to protest with a sign is how you raising your voice.
Oh my God, I remember this image. So powerful. Sometimes, of course, you don't know all the people you photograph. So if they see their picture and they want to reach out to you, Instagram or what?
Yeah, Instagram, it's a good way to reach out to me. If they see my picture, if I post a picture, or if you think that I might have your picture, you can reach out to me. I'll be gladly to do so. A lot of times people ask me at marches and I share with them, and then I send them the picture. I tell them, hey, take a picture of yourself, how you look, because now since we're all masked, sometimes I don't know when people have their account in private. So I tell either take a picture of how you look or take a picture with me, and right there, and people do it, and then smart, and I establish nice connection, great people. I've met great people by sharing their images and let them know that they can share it, for their purposes in their accounts or for different purposes. Unless it's commercial. If it's going to be commercial, then I require for permission, or we can talk about it or anything. But most of what happened, it's been people sharing their things, and some groups or movement have used it for their promotional purposes, which I'm okay with it as long as it's for social movements.
Yeah, otherwise contact you, and of course.
This was a visual that it was done for the people that here, the Torch of Friendship. So a lot of vigils happen. This was for people who have been killed, black and brown people who have been killed in the hands of police officers around the country.
It's very beautiful. Do they play music? Is it prayer?
It's pretty much prayer. People talk and share the intimacy. I chose these ones, a couple of these ones, because early in February, before the big protest and the pandemic kicked in Dominican Republic, there was a big protest due to election corruptions. Yeah, so everybody around the world, Dominicans around the world, in New York, and here in Miami, they went out and protest about that, and the outcome of it was that the administration who was the governing, they lost the elections to a new administration due to the outrage of people with all
So
the
win for the people.
And this one's coming up. It was for trans lives. These are trans people who have died aggressively, some due to some certain abuse. They got beat up or something.
It's so wild to me that we have to fight for rights for people.
Yeah. Well,
It's
it's always been
frustrating.
like that. It's always been like that. The women voting, the suffragist movement, it started with like that. And this was in Washington.
So here we
So
go.
DC was pretty much the last place where everybody conveyed together for an outrage, for this outrage that caused in the summer with the uprising.
Wow.
And people from all walks of life came about.
And you're planning on going back there again for the inauguration?
Probably, yeah. I'm planning on doing so and see how the communities will behave. You see that a lot of they had at the beginning, they had a lot of COVID distancing, like social distancing and COVID restrictions, which later it changed, but everybody was wearing their mask. So it was, even though there was thousands of people present, it was not something to be scared of, because pretty much everybody was going through the taking care and the measures and the COVID measures.
Okay.
There's a couple more for Washington, D.C. There at the bottom, more at the bottom there. Yeah. This one's, yeah.
Wow. Very strong.
And this was this group of people who were in black with the 846 is George Floyd family. All these people were George Floyd family. They all came out from Minnesota and to be present. There were a lot of them, and families and friends, and they took part of the. And this was in. Right across, right in front. This is right outside Lafayette Park, right across the White House.
Very powerful images, Jonathan.
So all of this was translated, and it got translated to what is going to happen during the elections. So I decided also to see the movements of people, how they were going to behave, especially down here in South Florida, which was a big battleground, especially. We became trend in Miami-Dade because Miami-Dade was very divided, and it dictated how the rest of the state of Florida was gonna go, which went for Donald Trump. So it was very interesting to see. This was kind of a clash between the two groups, the two political groups.
Right. So as we're wrapping up this photo exhibition, what are we looking at for next year?
The last ones were.
I do want to look at those. Yes, we had a.
So this was this was the slot walk. This was done in December. It was the last big march that happened.
Just recently.
I
really would love to speak. If anybody knows anyone that participated in the slut walk or in the planning of the slut walk, send in a comment, tag me up. I would love to speak to them. I want to know more about this. I mean, there's a huge industry, and also Miami being a huge place of sex trafficking. I just feel like this is something that really needs to be discussed. We need to talk about this. For sure. Powerful, powerful images, Jonathan. Very, very
So
strong.
part of this, the slot walk grew, started in Canada. Actually, it's a movement that
Really?
started in Canada when police officers said that basically excuse raping women due to the way that they dressed.
Right.
So what came about, it was an outrage and a movement that started by organizing for, to go out wearing, especially women wearing whatever they wish and going out however they wish, by stating that no matter how I dress, men don't have the right to rape women.
Absolutely.
And it has extrapolate to the sexual work because it has a similar feeling. Some men or law enforcers or people with certain authority feel that, people with authority feel that they have power over, just as women, over sexual workers as well.
Right. And then there's the laws about
So what they are
worker.
so what they're asking is pretty much to regulate and to be protected and
Like-
have sexual work to be regulated by the state.
Like Nevada.
Pretty much.
Well, lots of things on the agenda for 2021. And we will be here at Race to the Top covering it all and bringing you good stories as well as keeping you up to date with things that you should be aware about on your radar. I'm really thankful for you all sticking with me through the year. Jonathan Decamps will certainly be back, keeping us informed on all of the happenings. And I hope you all have a safe and happy new year. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.